established 1947. As the signs point out, Stuyvesant Town, better known as Stuytown, was completed just after World War II as affordable housing for thousands of former soldiers and their young families. But there was a problem.
They didn't want us down in Stuyvesant Town.
When 76-year-old Roger Paris says us, he means black people.
This is the cover of the brochure called Stuyvesant Town, This Is Your Home. And you see this sort of 1940s very happy white family, which in the context of what their racial discrimination policy was, really takes on a very unsettling tone.
Adam Thorburn wrote the play This Is Your Home about Stuytown's origins in racism. The sprawling development was conceived by New York power broker Robert Moses and MetLife chairman Frederick Ecker, who were openly against black veterans' families moving in.
Basically came out and said that this was only going to be for white residents because the presence of having African Americans and other people of color would decrease the economic value.
There was pushback by many white activists and veterans, as well as blacks.
They've just been fighting against fascism, and they come back, and here they are, with people being barred from the first decent housing that had been built for veterans in New York.
Alice Lorch Bartell's father, Lee Lorch, lost a series of jobs as a math professor over his years-long public efforts against the Stuytown so-called No Negroes policy.
We're willing to combat from inside a struggle to change his policy.
But the owners of Stuytown, MetLife, prevailed by having an alternative housing plan, as Bowery Boys podcaster Greg Young explains.
We're going to build a separate housing development, and that can be for African American residents, and that was the Riverton.
So instead of building a sprawling complex like they had for Stuyvesant Town and Parkchester, they built this.
Roger Paris and his family were among the first to live in Riverton, in Harlem, on the Harlem River. The complex was far smaller than Stuytown, just 7 buildings housing 4,400 people, all blacks, except for some white European war brides. And there was one other big difference from MetLife's other developments.
Somebody coming, a representative from MetLife, coming down to where you lived and checking out where you live, how you live.
Yes, your life and lifestyle had to be approved first, regardless of your ability to pay rent.
It was terrible for that time period or any time period. Why they did it is because they were looking for what white people considered the model Negro.
Paris says that Riverton residents knew that it was a small token development.
They had the steak, and they gave us the crumbs from the plate, But you know what? We made those crumbs in the steak.
The vetting process resulted in the development becoming kind of a who's who of Harlem, the country, and the world, from jazz greats to sports legends, and one of the first black performers to sing on national TV.
Billy Williams.
We had lawyers, doctors, teachers,
And among their children came a Pulitzer Prize winner and a music mogul. Not bad for a development 1/5 the size of Stuytown. And after 9 years of protests at Stuytown, the owner, MetLife, relented and allowed 3 black families to move in. But 3 white activist families, including Alice Lorch Bartell's family, had to agree to leave.
I agree with my parents. I think they did the right thing.
MetLife gave up ownership of all of its developments over time. They're still leafy communities with a mix of apartments that are rent regulated and market rate, which some believe still leaves room for discrimination due to race and economic status.
There is another kind of social exclusion for class now.
But a child of historical racism here, who overcame a drug addiction and went on to become a social worker and playwright, says the lowest economic classes know how to aim high.
Harlem and living here shaped who I am now. And I like who I am now. And
So let's keep talking about this. We have James Ford joining us now in the studio. And I guess my question is, when you talk about these developments, how racially diverse are they now?
A good question. And owners of both Stuytown and Riverton say they're very proud of the diversity of their communities now, but Stuytown remains more white and Riverton remains mostly black. Part of the reason, affordability. Nearly 80% of Riverton's apartments are reserved for tenants who have a proven income that's less than very, very low six figures. Stuytown also has similar affordable housing, but it makes up about 44% of all of its apartments. Most of the rest are market rate. It's worth pointing out, too, that another standout resident of Riverton, David Dinkins, former mayor of New York City.
All right.
Back to you, Nick.
for that.
All right, James, thank you. Well, here at Pix 11, we want our viewers to know we are committed to telling the stories of social justice and race, both locally and across the nation.
You can find our special reports on issues of equality, reform, and more at pix11.com/created equal.